The scary footage you're about to watch was captured inside a house in Wakayama, Japan. One that survived war, loss, and decades of silence. Inside these old walls, something else seems to be holding on. Investigators Shiro and Kaio believe the house's tragic history might explain the strange activities that's been reported there for years. But what they captured on camera that night was far more disturbing than anything they expected. Here's how it started.
ちょっと今日外観は NG なんで一旦ここからやっていきたいと思います。失礼します。なんか線香のような匂いがしますね。ガムテープで貼られてるはずこれ。え？ちょっと待って。めちゃくちゃ今上で足音。
Upon entry, he hears those fabled footsteps from upstairs. He finds creepy dolls, slippers set out for him, and a calendar set to 2019. After picking up nothing but the shakes from that creepy clown doll, he heard something that made his blood run cold.
ハクビシンとかいる可能性もあるんで、でここスリッパを用意してくださってるんで、ちょっとスリッパで。よいしょ、失礼します。2019年。めっちゃ顔認証してる、ここ。ただ、すごく広いですね、これ。どっから回っていけばいいんだろう。厄除け？開運。待って。めっちゃいます。
Did you hear that? A woman's voice, quiet but close. The house was supposed to be empty. Kaio was the only other person there. So where did it come from? Shiro felt the energy shift fast. That's when he found the photo album.
写真はないでしょうね。なんかここの家主の方、先ほどお会いしたんですけど。どっからなった？そっち側から聞こえるな。何これ？お写真ですかね。ここのお家のこれなんだ？これここのお家っぽい。モザイクか。すげえなんか喋り声聞こえるな。ここのお家かなこれ全部。うわすごいね。
He notices that there are a lot of different people's pictures throughout the whole book. Kaio told him the house had ties to the Pacific War. Now standing in front of the photo album packed with unfamiliar faces, Shiro had one thought. Were these the people who vanished back then? The moment that hit, the temperature dropped. As he moved deeper into the house, it hit again. They weren't alone.
全体的にすごくやばい感覚はするんですけど、うおっちょっと待って、全く無風ですけど今。いやこれほら風全く入るような場所ないっすからね。うおっちょっと出てます？
The door closing by itself was creepy enough, but what the hell was looking through the window? Did you see it?
ちょっと待って。うおっちょっと
Something was pressed against the glass, clear as day. But when they ran in to check, nothing. just a distant crash from upstairs. That was enough. If they were going to prove something was there, they needed physical evidence. So, they set a trap.
そうですね。一人ずつにします？
確かにちょっとトリフィールド一旦俺大丈夫ですよ。
わかりました。
はい。
大丈夫ですか？こっちの音入っても。
はい。
え
ちょっとこれ映ってる。あ、カメラ持ってますよ。首もげたんだけど。セットしました。これ音入っちゃいますね。
そうですね。
確かにちょっとトリフィールド一旦俺大丈夫ですよ。
わかりました。
はい。
大丈夫ですか？こっちの音入っても。
はい。
Sure, battery-powered toys can switch on by themselves, but they usually don't, unless someone presses them. So who or what just did that? Looking for more proof, they set up a human sensor on one of the doors, assuming it'd sit there quietly.
アクションを起こしてもらってもよろしいですか？
明かりついたぞ。今そっちにカメラ向けてなかったけど。今日さ消えた。
But then, it triggered. Those sensors only go off when something moves, but neither of them were near it, and they weren't even facing that way when it triggered. Spooked, they scuttled back to the front of the house, only to find proof that someone or something had been standing there just moments before.
やばい。むっちゃ音、なんかさ、むっちゃ音鳴ってんすよ、あっち。
あ、向こうの部屋が。
今行ってきたんですけど、音の出所がわからんくて。
え、
何今の？
やば。
でもシロさんじゃないですよ。
俺じゃない、俺全然俺。
違いますよね。
でもトリフィールドなんか反応してましたね、さっき。
そう、急にトリフィールドがもう全く反応しなくて、もうあかんかなと思ってる時に急にビーって反応したんで。
待って、今めっちゃ寒気走って、なんかいなかったですね、今ここに。
でも
なんか触られた感じしたんですけど。
マジですか？これじゃないですか？この人形じゃないですか？
あ、これか？じゃバリ寒気だった今。めっちゃ触られた感じした。これ？だって、すいません。ちょっといきなり。
シロさん、ここ手形あるじゃないですか？
マジだ。何この手形？
シロさん触られたの？
間違ってた。なんか触られた感じしたんですよ。なんかここになんかいい感じで手形あるから嘘くさいですけど、俺知らなかったねこれ今の。
でもこれ手形の位置むっちゃシロさんの肩らへんの位置ちゃいます？
ここでマジで
めっちゃピンポイントですよ。
やっぱここら辺やばいんかな。
The handprint sat right at shoulder height, like something tried to grab him. Sure, One of them could have left it, but they hadn't been near that part of the house in over 15 minutes, and it definitely wasn't there before. Whatever's in that place clearly isn't ready to let go.
ちょっと待って。うおっちょっと。
Number 6. Hardly working. This next clip comes from a work site in Indonesia, where a maintenance crew was dealing with a truck shift after a mudslide. One of the workers started filming, probably expected to catch some chaos on camera. And in a way, he did, but not the kind he was expecting. Take a look.
Un video corto grabado en Indonesia nos muestra cómo a plena luz del día, mientras se hacen trabajos de mantenimiento, un ente apareció en la toma. Una extraña mujer es grabada en medio de los trabajadores y ellos parecen no notarlo. ¿Será esto un fantasma real?
A woman appears to be standing completely still right before the truck moves over her. You don't get much detail, so yeah, it could have been someone passing by, just watching the scene. But when you zoom in on her face, there isn't one, just a blurred void where her features should be. Number 5. Security breach. This guy can't seem to catch a break. He works the long graveyard shift hours as a security guard for a leisure centre in his Spanish town. He and his work partner spent their evenings waiting for something to happen that never does. Or does it? Because after a while, his co-worker started taking less and less shifts, telling him that he felt as though things around him were messing with his head. The longer he worked there alone, the more he'd wish he heeded his partner's warnings.
Puta madre, coño. Joder.
The activity could have been achieved with some pulled strings, but where would anyone be hiding in that tiny room to pull them undetected? These kinds of things happen throughout the entire leisure centre, activity normally centering around the children's play areas.
Su puta. Bueno. Algo raro.
You could say it's unbalanced weight, but it is not suspicious that two things topple over in the exact same fashion. He mustered up the courage to carry on doing his usual rounds, and as you probably guessed, it only got more hair-raising.
La puerta esta. ¿Por qué está encendido? Hostias. ¿Hola?
Hola. Hola. Hostia, me pilo.
Luckily for him, after this downright horrifying experience, the Christmas holidays rolled in and he got some well-deserved chill time. Well, that was until he realised whatever had been haunting him at work might have followed him home.
Hola, buenas, feliz Navidad. Aquí en la casa de mis padres esperando a ver, para darles una sorpresa a ver ahora cuando vengan, que no saben que estoy aquí. ¡Hostias!
When he went back into work afterwards, he tried his best to stay away from the kids' area, hoping that if he just kept away from the hotspots, he would be fine. But he couldn't have been more wrong. The scariest part of this video is right at the end when the rowing machine handle continues to move. But it's not the swaying, it was the fact that it spun around and came to a complete halt. As it began to gently bounce up and down, he was hit with the undeniable realization that someone or something was holding onto the bar. He hot-footed it back through the building, hoping to happen upon something less petrifying, but as he stumbled past the kids' area once more, he was drawn towards one of the playrooms, which was when he witnessed his last straw.
Ay, su madre. Ay, su padre. Ay, su vieja. No jodas, no. Es que suenan... Se oyen cosas, macho. Ay, su... Joder. No jodas, macho. No, esto ya. Lo del carrito, macho. ¡Ay! No, esto ya muy raro.
The toy truck rolling by itself might have been the final straw, but it was that silent, empty building refusing to stay silent that pushed him to his limit. Whether these clips were the result of something messing with him from the shadows, or something far worse trying to latch on, one thing's clear: whatever's haunting that leisure centre isn't finished with him yet.
Ay, su vieja.
Number 4. The Haunted Bride. This woman thought she was moving into a quiet home where she could finally relax. Instead, the walls started whispering, neighbours stopped dropping by, and pretty soon the town was convinced she married a djinn. That's when paranormal HD Adam and his team showed up, and let's just say, it didn't take long before things got seriously messed up. They did a quick sweep of the house, partly to prove there was no one else inside, and partly to make sure they weren't about to get blindsided by something they couldn't see. Once they got a feel for the place, they asked to check out the downstairs, but the woman, she didn't seem too keen on that idea.
Miyiz?
Biraz bekleyin ya.
Niye?
Biraz gelin böyle.
Tamam geçelim. Geç Yasin önden.
She shakily asked him to wait and guides them into the living room. Why? What could she be so scared of? They sit down to talk, which is when it all starts to come out, and the woman begins to open up. She starts rocking back and forth, stammering and repeating herself, barely holding it together. Nobody in her village believes her, she says, but the boys will, any minute now. While they wait, they try to keep things calm with a few light questions, but that's when they realise something awful has happened to this woman.
Neden?
İstemiyorlar. Yakaza bilir misiniz yakaza?
Evet.
Bilir misiniz?
Evet.
Bu uyanıklık hali.
Evet.
O ara işte. Bu ara evlendik.
Her şey o zaman oldu yani.
Her şey o zaman oldu.
Peki hatırlıyor musunuz nasıl olduğunu?
Beni aldılar. Götürdüler. Düğün yaptılar bana. Davullu, zurnalı. Hayatımda ben öyle bir düğün görmedim.
Siz diyorsunuz ki şimdi ben onların halinlerine geçtim.
She says the words, "They took me," describing a dream where she was forced into a wedding. Who they are, she doesn't say, but whatever it is, it's still with her. She's visibly shaken, glancing around the room, rubbing her arms like something's crawling under her skin. Then, as she explains how this force even controls when she eats, something cuts through the silence that makes your blood run cold.
Hep bakarım saate. Saatim geliyor mu, gelmiyor mu?
Bu saat sürekli değişiyor mu yoksa hep böyle mi?
Değişiyor. Ben görüyorum değiştiğini.
Ama saat bizde doğru gözüküyor. Saat çalışmıyor.
Görüyorum. Birazdan saatim gelecek. Gideceğim, yemeğimi yiyeceğim.
Biz hiçbir şey istemiyoruz. Ne çay istiyoruz ne yemek istiyoruz. Hiçbir şey istemiyoruz. Biz sadece anlatılanlar doğru mu? Bunun üzerine gel.
Ama
Birkaç
biraz
soru-
acele edin. Kıskanıyorlar.
Kim kıskanıyor?
İstemiyorlar.
Niye? Neden?
Kıskanıyorlar.
Yanlış bir şey yapmıyoruz ki.
Kıskanıyorlar.
Bilmiyorum.
Ben de gerildim.
Vallahi çok gerildim ben ya.
Kıskandılar. Yemeği hazır. Gel diyorlar. Yemeği hazırladılar. Yemek hazır. Ben yemek yiyeceğim.
Abi
Hocam beni bekliyor.
Evet arkadaşlar.
Okay, so from here it all starts turning a bit mental. The door swinging shut on its own is bad enough, but her maniacal laugh is enough to chill the human torch to the bone.
Bekliyor.
The change in her character is striking. From the petrified woman we saw in the beginning to this crazed creature, could she have been possessed? After this, it only gets worse.
Bizi biraz rahat bırakın.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Oy, bunlar da inanmayacak bize. Bunlar da inanmıyorlar bize artık.
Abi ya.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Işık nerede?
Nerede?
Işık nerede abi?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Euzubillahimineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nereye?
Abi.
Tak Yasin. Gel. Arkadaşlar. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bir dakika. Tutamadım.
She asks for them to leave them alone for a while. The lights shut off, and when they finally get the torches out, she's gone. Clearly her husband arrived home. The boys began to move through the rooms, aware that two of their worst nightmares could have been lurking behind every corner. They discovered that the house is basically silent, empty and all of a sudden devoid of electricity. Under the blanket of darkness, they finally stumble upon the door that leads downstairs. They remembered how the woman didn't seem to want them to go down there and began to ponder why. But when they opened the door and headed downstairs, they wished they'd just headed for the front door instead.
Denersek bir şeyler yakalayabiliriz yani pis olan yerlerde genelde gözüktükleri için. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Görüyorsunuz arkadaşlar. Aynen. Aşağıya ayrı dinledim Yasin gel. Tamam.
Abi önden insene sen. Ben bilmiyorum.
Aynen. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Zaten hemen santim arkamdayım ya. Rahat ol. Ve merdivenler gerçekten çok küçük ve dar. Şöyle göstereyim burayı da arkadaşlar. Gerçekten dar burası. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillah. Allahu Ekber. Allahu Ekber. Allahu Ekber. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Whatever was messing with that door was trying to keep them down there, so they carried on their investigation and happened upon a house seemingly in a state of decay. The floor was in bits and there was a dead mouse laying in the middle of one of the rooms. Shaken to their cores, they tried to perform a type of ritual using a mirror to catch a glimpse of the jinn they originally came here for, but as they record the glass, something 10 times scarier shows up.
Euzubillahimineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Abi ne oldu?
Where the hell did she spring from? It's definitely her. The same mask, headscarf and cold eyes loom just over his shoulder. But when he swings around, she's nowhere to be seen. As you might have guessed, they took their leave quite quickly after that happened, but their exit wasn't as swift as they might have hoped.
Yasin çık buradan çık. Ver ışığı. Ver ışığı bana. Ver ışığı bana. Ver ışığı. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Oğlum burada terlik yoktu lan. Terlik gelmiş buraya.
Şaka mı abi bu?
Yemin ederim burada terlik yoktu.
Euzubillahimineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Çık hemen. Yavaş yavaş. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillah.
Euzubillahimineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Gel Yasin. Allahümme salli ala seyyidina. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Çık kapat. Aç. Çabuk aç lan. Çabuk aç lan, çabuk aç. Çabuk Yasin, Allah aşkına çabuk aç. Çabuk. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
There are so many questions here. Where was she hiding the whole time and how did she pop up and vanish multiple times? Who put the slippers outside the room they were in? And what on earth was possessing that woman? Was this a woman possessed, or just struggling with a deeply rooted mental illness? Or was it all good acting? What do you think?
Değişiyor. Ben görüyorum değiştiğini.
Number 3. Lift off. While walking through the woods in Indonesia, this guy was soaking in the peaceful night until something started feeling off. That classic feeling of being watched crept in. So, to calm his nerves or maybe catch someone lurking, he pulled out his camera and hit record. What he caught wasn't a person, and it definitely wasn't normal. Take a look.
Nang! Sumpah gua majuin nih nah.
Sure, anyone can fake a video, but that thing didn't look like your average Halloween prop. It looked like a handcrafted voodoo doll, big, detailed and deliberately unsettling. If nobody was hiding in the trees to pull the strings, maybe it wasn't just some prank. Maybe someone or something wanted to be seen. Number 2. Dolly Daydream. This kid was having a good time recording the collection of toys when one of the dolls in the pile stood out, so to speak.
Hola chicos, hoy vamos a jugar al pato, pato, ganso. ¿Ok? Empezamos. Salta a alguien. Pato. ¡Pinche muñeca! ¿Cuál? ¿Qué, Gustavo? Me volteó a ver la cámara.
You could chalk it up to being a trick of the angle, or maybe the camera shifting and warping the face, but let's take a closer look. There are 2 moments that makes this way harder to ignore, because those eyes, they didn't just jolt. They moved, smooth, steady, like they were locking onto ours, and for a second, it felt like she was looking right through the screen. And that smile, she didn't have it before. Sure, there are plenty of Jessie dolls out there with a grin, but this one, her face was blank until the eyes shifted, and here's the creepiest part. Those eyes weren't rolling around in the plastic sockets. According to the poster, they're painted on. Creepy, right? Number 1. Sweet Dreams. This guy always knew something was off in his house. He could feel the eyes on him, burning into the back of his neck. Every instinct screaming like a fire alarm. But rent's rent, so he stuck it out, blanket over his head, ignoring the weirdness, pretending it kept him safe. Until one night, he realised it didn't. There's a lot to unpack here. From the Baphomet-like apparition to the weird candle-flaked mannequin. It's like someone put every film from the Conjuring series into a blender. The frantic nature of the camera work does add some credibility though, and he has possibly the most rational approach we've seen in a while, to just get up, grab the dog and get the hell out of there. What the hell was that? It's definitely the figure of a human clad in robes, and notice something petrifying. The entity doesn't have any shadow, meaning it most likely froze. It drapes over a completely humanoid figure,